I guess first thing would be our action and consent items.
It's just, again, the standard bills and payrolls that was attached under the financial reports. And of course, we don't have that many, but since we do have a special meeting, we're just attaching those to get those out. And we also had some utility bills to pay. So just ask for approval for that tonight.
Okay, do we have approval for the action consent items?
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Teresa, you going to second? Ms. Carty seconds that. Okay, our next,
And we just need a vote on
need a vote on that.
that. All in favor?
All in favor? Say aye.
Okay,
Any opposed? Okay.
thank you.
Now we'll move down to our next program reviews. Ms. Belcher, I
And
think.
that would be me. One reason that we do need to do this is the program reviews must be submitted in an assist program through the State Department, and it asks for district approval by June 1st. Today's May 30th. So we need to
We're
get
cutting that close.
this needs to be done. And what I have for you is anticipated scores that I've calculated. Now, the program reviews are different in relation to how they're going to be accountable. As the schools actually, you can kind of think of it as grade themselves with this. A 3 is the best score you can get in an area, which would be what we call distinguished. A 2 score is proficient. A 1 is needs improvement, and 0 means no implementation. And I have all of the program reviews pulled up here, and I was just going to show you one so that you can kind of see the layout, because they're very similar, each of them, in their structure. But this is the elementary's arts and humanities. And we take a look at the table of contents. We have curriculum and instruction, and that is what we call our standard, and it has demonstrators under it. So demonstrator 1 is student access. Demonstrator 2 is aligned and rigorous curriculum. And you're going to see this common language between all program reviews. Every program review has a curriculum and instruction standard. But now the things about it are specific to that area, if it's arts and humanities, if it's writing, or if it's practical living and career studies. Each program review has a formative and summative assessment standard. Each program review has a professional development standard, and each one has an administrative leadership support and monitoring standard. And if you notice, that's how I have broken down the sheet that Mr. Belcher passed around to you, is so that you can see how they rate. Now remember, a 3 is distinguished, a 2 is proficient in that area, and a 1 is needs improvement. Now, when we add all those scores up to the right-hand side, to get a proficient, you would need an 8 in that final column. Notice how close both schools are to proficient. Like, you got the elementary's got a 7.733. Now remember, these are anticipated because this is Ms. Belcher's calculation. I may not have rounded as quickly as the state will on these, so there could be a little fluctuation in what we might see in the fall when these scores are released. But if you noticed, each program review for the elementary is below an 8. So that means all our program reviews are under needs improvement. And I will say, working with the teachers was a real privilege to get to work with them, because they are so conscientious and they so want to do what's best for our students. And honestly, our teachers, a lot of times when we were talking, I could tell they were grading themselves harder. And that's just the way they are. That we have a tendency to be harder on ourselves than others would see us. And so we went through this. We had several meetings, writing teams, then we did multidiscipline teams, and these are the scores that both schools have come out with. Notice I have written you some notes there. Score of 8 required for proficient. All areas of program review are needs improvement. So if we add all these scores up, and this is how they're going to include this in next year's goal, is what I kind of think of it, because we have a goal this year we need to meet and see if we meet it for next year when the next generation learner scores come out. But then they're going to set us a new goal next year, and this is going to be part of it. And that's where these next numbers come in. You take the total number, and all I did was add up all those numbers. You can check my math if you want to on that one. You can check me. But if all of those numbers had been 8, it would have added up to 24, which would have been, 24. They want everybody at proficient. So that would be a score of 24. Which would mean if you got a 24 out of 24, you would have got 100%, right? We're just shy of 100%. Notice it's like 92 points for the elementary. Now, why is that important? Is because they're saying next year, for our new goal, program reviews are going to be 23% of the new goal. So how many points total can be added for program reviews? 23 points. Elementary is going to get to add 21.258 points. So they're really close. So overall, it's a really good score. I mean, they're close to the total points possible, but it's just showing that there's room for us to work. And what I plan to do is, for the fall, is get together some things to remind teachers to include in their instruction, and I'll present those to you as well, of things that teachers will be planning to help to improve these scores for the next school year.
And a similar event is going to happen this coming year, like what happened with our assessment scores. They're going to rank schools highest to lowest, and then assign those cut scores for proficient and so forth. And so the one thing that you want to realize is that starting next year, a self-graded component will now be part of our district's overall score.
Tell them not to be so hard on themselves.
Well, they did a really good job, because once I started asking this, well, do you do this type of thing? They're like, well, yes. It's like, well, would that be evidence? Because that's part of it, is you have to tell your evidence and your rationale for why you score the way you do. So if we look in this program review up on the screen here, right here is curriculum instruction, student access, and you can see in these two areas they put needs improvement. And down here we have our evidence. So the question, and I can send you a copy of these if you want. I didn't print them all off because one program review is like 23 pages long. This one is 23. And so just kind of giving you a little overview here.
Well, I don't want 23 pages because I don't understand this. This is Pikeville Elementary School program, but you were giving...
anticipated scores. So the program reviews...
So the elementary school program has arts and humanities, practical living, and writing.
For their program reviews, yes.
Okay.
They also are submitting a K-3, but it's not going to be a part of accountability next year.
So you weren't reading the high school program from this. You were reading that from something else.
It's on the back side of it.
It's on the back if you
You
look.
didn't tell me turned over.
Sorry.
So tell me everything.
Sorry.
Okay, gotcha. Did you turn it over?
Yes, I did.
Oh, God. Daggone it, I hate it when it's like this.
Sorry.
Well, you put a great big over,
Okay.
and then,
It helps.
I'll take that.
okay,
note.
gotcha. Gotcha, I'm with you
All right.
now.
So that kind of gives you just an idea, but we do want your approval because the state does want that before the submission of June 1st. Just to know that this is, I went to all the meetings that I possibly could as district representation to help the teachers along, and trying to help them not to be so hard on themselves, because they do have and we all do. We all have a tendency to be our own worst critics. And sometimes they would be, oh, okay, and then sometimes they'd be like, nope, we're sticking with this one, and that's okay. That just gives us room to grow, is the way we can look at it. And they just really do have the best interest of the students at heart with these. So I would ask that, do you have any other questions on this?
Come on, make a fool of yourself, just like I did.
This is the first year for schools completing these. Something new, as a matter of fact. The program review process itself is not even complete, because in addition to the K-3, there will be world language, there will be other things that will be added. It's still not a finished product yet. So probably the best analogy we can give you is, as far as schools self-scoring, this would be most reminiscent for board members to recall school districts scoring writing portfolios. Well, this is the only segment of the assessment that schools are responsible for scoring themselves. The rest of the assessment, of course, is we simply get the results back after our DAC. Mr. Belcher there sends half the lobby out in cardboard boxes there to UPS to send back and to mail back. But this is the one piece that, of course, the schools are responsible for scoring. And again, this is the first year for this.
And some of you may wonder, well, how does this compare to other schools in the state? Well, we don't know, because everybody is required to submit this by June 1st. And so everybody's going to submit it. They will calculate the results, because this calculation is only based upon what I went through and done myself. So they will release, like Mr. Belcher said, the ranking, that competitive model. And that's when we will know where we are in relation to other districts.
Mr. Green, there's some talk of maybe an audit type procedure, but we're still unsure of how that will look. If it'll be random.
Right. And the first assumption you would make, okay, is if these kinds of things are going to be audited, it would make sense to, if for those reviewing or auditing, to look at writing scores, for example, within the program reviews, and of course see if that compares or measures or is anywhere in correlation with writing scores of students that are actually taking the writing assessment. In other words, I would assume that at the state level, your writing scores on the program reviews better somewhat match what you're showing, or there should not be a significant outlier there. And of course, regardless what areas our students are assessed in, we'll make sure that we all strive to be the absolute best, regardless what category it is. So first year, and we're going to continue to improve and focus on these and implement the others as they come down the pike. But Ms. Belcher does need an approval for that tonight.
Do we have a motion to approve the program reviews for submittal to the Kentucky Department of Education? Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Everybody approves, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, next, Mr. Green has the 2013-14 tuition schedule.
Yes, something that we wanted to try to get out as quickly as possible as a service to parents that do pay tuition for students. I'd like to pass, if you would, please pass each of these down. I appreciate Mr. Johnson drafting a letter to send out to parents regarding the new tuition schedule. And just like to mention that the last tuition schedule was approved November the 16th, 2010. And at that time, for one student, the rate for admission to Pikeville Independent Schools was $925. The tuition schedule submitted for approval tonight for the upcoming school year would increase that by $75 to $1,000. And you'll notice that this is broken down to per day, per month, and per semester. I appreciate Mr. Johnson, our Director of Pupil Personnel, breaking these numbers down so that, in essence, for one student, you're going from $5.29 per day to $5.81. For the month, it's $92.50 with an increase to $100. And of course, per semester, it's an increase of $462.50 to $500. And then for two students, It's going from 1,400 to 1,700. We've got that broken down per day and per month. For 3 students, from 1,850 to 2,550, and for 4 or more, from 2,275 to 3,300 for the coming year. The 14-15 school year would be an even $1,000 across the board per student. So it would be over 2 years getting to that $1,000. And of course, at the last meeting, shared with the community, the audience, and of course our Board of Education, our employees are well aware of reasons as to why we're having to raise this. And of course, the main objective or reason is that we want to continue to provide a high-performing education to every student within our school district. And of course, first and foremost, our district, it's imperative that we remain one of the 53 now independent school districts within the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So I would request board approval for the tuition schedule tonight. Of course, if you have any questions, please ask.
Anyone have a question? Well, we're going to need a motion to approve the 2013-14 tuition schedule. Do I have somebody to make that motion? Okay. Mr. Beeler, we have a second.
I'll second it.
Ms. Carty, do we, all in favor, say aye. And any opposed? Okay.
Okay. Would thank you all, and again, we'll try to get those letters out notifying tuition paying parents of that tomorrow, so we can begin immediately making plans. And for those tuition payments, the other thing I'd like to point out is that June 15th for the upcoming school year, for the 2013-2014 school year, Pikeville Independent Schools will begin receiving payments for tuition. Had about 4 phone calls today asking when can we go ahead and start paying for the tuition. Something I'd love to share with the audience is this. Because of kindergarten registration and scheduling and pre-registration for junior high and the high school classes, we want to make certain that if you're thinking of bringing your son or daughter to Pikeville Independent Schools as quickly as possible, we need these packets completed, and especially if you're a tuition paying student. So we just wanted to share that information, get that out. Just need a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Combs. Second, Mr. Beeler.